behind it is what is important. And usually what lies behind it is anxiety. It is usually somebody who's a little bit more anxious or having a bit of an anxiety. And now we're all suffering from all these stresses in today's life. But if a person is more Zo dominant, then the three and the fourth dimensions of intelligence is open, that consciousness is stronger. So a person would be able to see the bigger picture of things and see the above, in between and beyond, read body language, read subtleties, and all those things they pick up out of their perception. Their perceptual ability on the Zo side is stronger. So that would automatically make a person to pick up the stuff and create a little bit more of a tension, because it is experiencing the anxiety of the room or of the environment is transferring to the person, and it takes those things in. Where if a person is too Z, you will be blunt for those intelligences. Your intelligences won't see and perceive so strong, so you are not as conscious of the human and the bigger picture subtleties of things. So we find that bad attitude is much stronger, generally speaking, amongst a person who is more Zo dominant. And that is not a bad thing, up to the point where a person is more like, I would say, 30% and higher. So let's look at the score of that. So it's very important to look at the score of BAT. Firstly, if the BAT score is from 0 to under 10, then you must ask yourself the question, is this person a wallflower or a pushover? So this person is maybe lacking assertiveness. And then you have to start asking prompting questions just to determine, is that true or not? So if that bad attitude, the person is not having an opinion and is a pushover a bit, so then that is the negative side, and at the low bottom in scale it's actually negative. So in some of these Hardwires scores, it doesn't mean that when the person is 0 it is good. You've got to understand the Hardwire. So between 0 and 10, we would think that that person is maybe not very assertive and maybe not going to push his point or argument, and maybe not be allowing people to mess a bit around with him. So that could be the case. Then from 10 to 25 to 30, maybe max 30. I would not take it one step more than 30. That is the score that I really like, because that is the score where the person has got a bit of a bad attitude, a bit of a badass, a bit of a go-getter, and a bit of a person who's got something to say about the world in which we live. And that's what we call the change maker score. So from 10 to just beyond 30 is what we call the change maker score. And what that actually means is that person is quite is a bit of a fighter. He's just like a dog in the fight. Is going to fight for things. It's going to argue and have an opinion about stuff, and maybe be willing to make the world a better place, and be willing to fight for what is right in the world, and stand up for things that is wrong in the world, and not just allow it to go. So that I think Malcolm, somebody said, it takes a good man to do nothing for evil to prosper. And that is exactly what it is. That ability to have positive energy to go into the fight and to stand for what is the truth and what is right, and not stand back for that. Okay, so that is what we usually find in the score between 10 and 30. But anything that goes above that, all those characteristics like the stubborn or the because the bad attitude person will always ask, why must I do this? Why must I do that? So but if you don't give a human the why, then you are basically a perpetrator in my mind. sorry, somebody is putting on the, yeah, there it's better. So if we don't give a human, if you give a human a challenge or an instruction or a task and you don't give the why, then you basically just expect them. It's a perpetration. It's a narcissistic way of working with a human, because a person has got the right to understand why he should be doing a task and not just say, because I tell you so. So if a person doesn't understand the why, the end result, what is the meaning of this thing, then why would a human be motivated, for starters, and have volitional ability to do that task? So so this is typically where the bad attitude comes in, where humans will say, I'm telling you to do this and you don't ask me questions, I'm your mother, or whatever, and then you just elicit that bad attitude hardwire in a person, which is making from you a perpetrator. Anyone that is a poker or a provoker of growing of hardwires is obviously an immature challenger, or an immature or a lack of consciousness of understanding that hardwires, to block that hardwire more whilst you want a good response, is not going to help you. You've got to get that hardwire down. You can't work in the hardwire and let that hardwire works against you. You've got to do something that breaks and busts that hardwire from coming up in a human. So the bad attitude hardwire from 30% and higher, it is negative, it's destructive. It is not constructive like the 10 to 30%. So it just brings negative energy. It's the rotten apple thing. It brings negative energy in the environment. People are negative, they're criticizing, they're stubborn, they are passive aggressive, and they are not responding in an able way. And that is just blocking not only the person with a hardwire, but the ecosystem in which the person is operating. And the ecosystem is the milieu, or the environment in which they operate. So a bad attitude from 30 and above, you've got to remove that rotten apple out of the environment. You must immediately put them into a process where they crack into consciousness, and where there's not one day that you allow that rotten apple syndrome to prevail. Because, as you know, put one rotten apple in a box of apples and every apple goes rotten. Your whole organization is rotten. I have been coming into so many companies where A to B has to come in, and where we're bringing in the who's, which is the human operating system, the optimization system, and you just inherit this whole rotten apple box full of rotten apples. Everyone is just passive aggressive. They are playing out their hardwires, and they are all having bad attitudes that is just regressing in different ways, and they don't know how to change it and how to resolve it. And that is why, if you start understanding ecosystems for change, the module that is going to be presented now in KZN, then you'll understand that there's got to be a massive overt work in induction, and the whole time inducting humans into an ecosystem, what it is and what it is not, and how you actually manage that flow where no hardwires are ever allowed to just run free, and where humans have to own it and have to take ownership and be responsible and know what to do and how to rewire and take control over it, and that it's a performance management thing. So a bad attitude is as we said, usually driven by a higher anxiety. So a person who looks arrogant, you'll find that amongst teenagers a lot. My own teenager, when she was a teenager, I saw it so much in her, how they then gooi that bad attitude at you, whatever, or they roll their eyes. And if you really look at that, behind that, it's just anxiety. So that is just like a little bit of a puff up. It's a puff up girl, or arrogance. Arrogance is this puff up thing that actually you must see the face of anxiety in it and just know this is anxiety. So I have to take out the techniques out of my back pocket, and I've got to have always the tools to get anxiety down and to get volition up. And when you break that whole thing, then you break the hardwire from manifesting, and you don't actually exacerbate that hardwire. All right, so I think you can also, if you look at the if we look back at the Vic hardwire, then you'll see that one triangle of the Vic hardwire is going to bring the being the persecutor and being the criticizer and making judgments over people type of thing. So when a person has got a victim, for sure they're going to have a bad attitude hardwire as well, and they're going to sit with that thing. And the bad attitude hardwire makes the following babies. Bad attitude hardwire firstly makes a baby called vengefulness, and that is having grudges. And that is always linked to that. And then you can always link the BAT, the bad attitude hardwire, with eco, which is the other hardwire that's called ecosystems. And we'll talk about that in this session. So you can immediately ask two questions. You can check out what is the score on Venge, and you can check out what's the score on ecosystems. And the ecosystems, what type of environments does the person find themselves in that is exaggerating the hardwire. Okay, so a BIT, if it's linked to ZOR, you could start going into a little bit of a rabbit hole to think about truth, because a person who does. Can we mute you?
I beg your pardon.
Okay. Okay, so if you want to look at the combination between ZOR and bad attitude, you might find that person is in environments that is compromised, ecosystems that's compromised. Like for instance, the people take shortcuts. They don't deal with truth. They don't stand for the truth. They busy with little deceits and little things, and then you will find somebody's bad attitude hardwire that's got a strong ZOR, that can see the full big picture. They would go berserk. That bad attitude hardwire will just get worse, where they can see this funder that's coming here, that's pretending they're going to give you all the money, or whatever. All these humans that talk stuff, but they can see right through it because they've got a ZOR ability. There you'll see the bad attitude hardwire just flaring up in a highway. Then another way that can flare up the bad attitude hardwire is LIB. So the limiting beliefs we were talking about in our previous session is you could have a lot of limiting beliefs. You could have limiting beliefs about this type of thing and that type of subculture and this type of thing, and then you stand so strong for that thing that you are advocating for, and you're an advocate for this, and you're standing, but it's very likely a limiting belief. It's driven by anxiety and unsurety. And you're insecure about who you really are. So now you're driving these weird belief systems and weird philosophies and stuff. And then if somebody dares to touch upon that philosophy or belief system, then your bad attitude just flares up, and the BIT just goes up and down. So you would find it amongst subcultures, like I was telling you, subcultures who are thinking they are now a clan and their own thing, and they know the answers to life, and they do the right thing. And it can be also on sexual orientations and stuff. You find how high those people's bad attitude scores are. It's just sky high, and it's absolutely in the negative way. It's destructive and it's rebellious. So the rebellion in that human is so high, and then they push their philosophies and this stuff through their bad attitude, and they will kill for their bad attitude through that bad attitude. Another very nice example of how bad attitude develops is within ecosystems, where a person was maybe part of the founding members or the founding employees. He was here first, so he was the blue-eyed boy for the CEO. And he helped, and he was jack of all trades and doing everything and learning everything on the job. Maybe didn't have the qualifications, but learned these skills on the job. Now the company grows and more people get employed. And now suddenly that spoiled child syndrome doesn't get the attention anymore. And then that person starts manifesting in the tantrums and the bad attitude, all the bad attitude signs. And then they will actually work against everything that is good because they are now not the blue-eyed boy anymore. And that is the problem we see in workplaces where companies have got humans for up to 20 years working for them. I mean, it is so unhealthy if you don't the whole time stimulate that human and give him new, just right challenges. And a workplace and an ecosystem has to be a throughput system. It cannot be a place where you land it and you make a nest and you make a mouse nest for yourself, and then you start perpetrating people and you develop your attitude around that. It's got to be a throughput system. So we see that a lot in workplaces where we have so many people with very high BAT score that long time back should have been challenged to a higher level, challenged, just like challenges, higher, 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 so that they can always stay out of mischief and into their paving out their bright new future and their life, and they're always in that positive volitional state. Okay, so that is BAT for you. Would you like a question before I go on to eco? Cool. Next one is ecosystems. So eco, there's a whole school of thought behind this hardwire. So that's why there's a module that we offer, module 2 of the responsive leadership qualification, that is called ecosystems for change, as opposed to an ecosystem for chance, an environment and a place that is just you don't have the consciousness of the human's monkey tricks and the human's behavioral patterns and insecurities. So if you are not 100% conscious and human-centered in your approach to any workplace, doesn't matter whether you are in the mining sector or the agricultural sector or the development sector or the parenting sector or whatever sector you are, if there's humans working there and you are not having a human-centered approach, you will run and manage your environment and your organization as an ecosystem for chance, because you're not conscious of the responsiveness of the human factor and the human condition. And that is the problem that we're having in our ecosystem. So what ecosystems are we talking about? Your first and foremost ecosystem is your ecosystem that you are born in, which is your parenting ecosystem. And that is an ecosystem that you have to have lots of respect for which you need to actually have a degree to manage, to understand how to manage an ecosystem that moves a small little vulnerable human from dependency to the highest level of independence and dignity, and where that human becomes a replication of a leader that you are supposed to be. And that doesn't matter whether it is now the first ecosystem, the first and foremost ecosystem, the most important one, which is the parenting home, but that can be the second one, which is the ECD that you place your child in. And if you don't know how to do an ecosystem audit, you can put your child into an ecosystem for chance, and it can mess up that child for life. And it was your choice to actually do that in an unconscious way, not knowing the science of ecosystems. And then the next ecosystem, school, the next ecosystem can be church or social groups or any environment where humans do things together that actually has got certain dynamics. And then the other ecosystem of which we are assessing in this specific assessment tool is the work ecosystem, the income generating ecosystem. And it can be that you are working from home, but your working from home environment cannot maybe empower you at all, or it can distract you. It can do all sorts of things. So it could be a formal work environment, or it can be an informal work environment. And this eco hardwire is a very, very critical hardwire. It hardwires humans in massive, massive ways. So I was explaining to you how if a human is in the wrong ecosystem, how BAT hardwire is just going to flare up. So the Z side of the brain if a person is more Z dominant in an ecosystem where people are maybe more ZO dominant in management, that Z dominant person's bad attitude is going to flare up, because they're going to the whole time hear things that's 3 and 4 dimensional, but they're not going to get it because they're not conscious and responsive enough on it. And then they're going to have a bad attitude, and they're going to fight it and become rebellious against it and devalue and discredit it. That's what's going to happen. And then they're going to be criticizing and negative and passive aggressive towards it, because their Zo side doesn't work strong. So they can't hear it. They can't respond in an able way towards it. And then they're going to have just a bigger bad attitude flaring up. Then likewise, if a person is more Zo dominant and is managed by a Z dominant manager, then the person is going to the whole time just hear 2-dimensional things, and everything is just about numbers and about spreadsheets and the Zo person is going to want to fall apart, and the bad attitude is just going to go more and more. Can you see why it's so important for us to have whole brain understanding in management, how to run an ecosystem for change, which is an ecosystem where you are thinking about the whole, everything, you are fully conscious, and where humans are expected to be self-driven entities and have crutches for competence and have an end result, and they must be able to move the whole time. So an ecosystem for change is a pre-designed place that stimulates and challenges a human and puts you into what we call just right challenges all the time. And if your work environment is not doing that, and you're bored and you are getting too high challenges, it's not a just right challenge. You're going to be just hardwiring all the time, and you're going to just be the whole time back in your primitive brain. So it's an environment that is conscious of human responsiveness and can see, but this human is on an A1 level in this and on an A2 level, and I better give it just right challenge there, and that's going to create the positive anxiety down and volition up, and we call it just right challenge. I heard that Prince Harry, he did his gap year in and these people that visited me, they told me that they're doing this program where they, for 3 weeks, where they put the children into the zone, these different zones, but the kids come for 5 days at a time, and then they learn to put the child into not into the relaxing zone, but into the discovery zone. And they should never put the child into the panic zone. And then I realized it's just some pop psychology, beginning of understanding of the just right challenge and how the happy hormones secrete. So they're starting to understand something, but they don't keep on moving that child the whole time into higher levels of just right, which is the discovery zone. So by the way, and they don't understand that it's got to be a continuous growth and development process that never stops, and the child has to take ownership, or the human that is, or the employee or whoever, need to have enough insight, understanding, and drive their own life with just right challenges, and they need it. It's like more than oxygen to always have just right challenges in the different sides of your brain, so that you can become more and more whole brain. So that would be an ecosystem for change, an environment, a work environment that is understanding, that can see on what level of responsiveness humans are, and that can understand how to not provoke the hardwires, but remove the hardwires, help the people to remove and to get rid of their own hardwires, and to grow on the A to B scale to higher levels of responsibilities, so that they can be the most responsive, most contributive, most adaptive humans in the workplace. And if those things are not present, then there's a very bad hardwire that is affecting and causing just more and more hardwires. So I've got this friend that I, for my whole life, trying to not be friends with, but we were friends in school time, but she has become such a victim in her life, and she just refuses to, like a very deep victim, they dwell in their pity, and they dwell in their victimness. They love it. They get some cheap kick out of that. So she will always say to me how unhappy she is in her workplace. So that's the ecosystem. Then I say to her, get out of it. It is just making you a bigger victim, because the harder, the more you stay into a place that does not empower you, the more your victim hardwire is just going to be bigger and fatter and take over your whole mind and your whole brain. And then she will phone and tell me how unhappy she is in a marriage, which is an ecosystem. And then I'll say to her, you know, your victim hardwire is so high, you put yourself the whole time into those states, into those ecosystems that just disempowers you more and more. Get out of it. You are a master of your own destiny. But if you don't understand these things and take ownership over it, nobody can help you. And don't please phone me again if you cannot understand what the problem is that you are having. You are just growing your victim by placing yourself the whole time back into the bad ecosystems. So those two hardwires coincide with each other in a massive way. So you'll always draw the line. If you look at the Vic, you will be able to see what's going on in the ecosystem. Then there's a hardwire that we haven't discussed that grows in a bad ecosystem, and that is called WIZ. So that's called wolf in sheep's clothing. So the wolf in sheep's clothing hardwire is we call it covert narcissism. So it is somebody who is the great pretender and who is basically a hypocrite. So you're hypocritical. You cannot stand for the truth. You can just you just stay with your fake smiles and your plastic smiles and faces, and in the meantime it is not the true you that's in the inside. But you cannot stand for the truth. You cannot actually go to the front and stand for the truth. And then if a person is having those with hardwire that's forming because of the ecosystem, now you'll find yourself, I have found myself in workplaces where I can see I have to be a whiz. I have to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, because otherwise they will just push me down and they will throw me out and I will lose my job. So be it. Are you compromising your soul and just developing more hardwires in the wrong ecosystem? No, you have a choice. You have a choice. So that means you are too E-locked. So can you see how E-lock is coming in again? You believe you can't, you have to, you're dependent on something. So then we've got to first go and break the E-lock hardwire so that you can realize, but I'm not E-locked. I don't have to now just hardwire more and more, and block myself from becoming the absolute wonderful, unique Vivi that I am. I must go and compromise myself, and then I must play a lie and play plastic smiles and faces, because the work environment is breeding the wolf in sheep's clothing mentality, the great pretend mentality. And that we find a lot. You know, I just dealt with a group that's dealing with Afrikaans unemployed people and the growing masses of unemployed people in the white Afrikaans unemployed people, and the whole organization. I said, you can't help them. That's why you're giving food parcels. It's because you need to change. You are walking around with all these plastic smiles and faces. You are sitting with all these hardwires in your organization. We first have to change that before you can ever change them. That is why you're doing the quick fix thing of giving handouts and making your organization look as if it's wonderful, so that you can raise more money and count the statistics and the numbers of how many people you helped into the dungeons is what you do. So it is so critical to understand that the ecosystem, and what we also said in the beginning of this training is that when a person's hardwires are in the red, the first thing you have to do is they have to get out of the ecosystem, because it will never be in the red if there's not something, a milieu or a status quo environment that is perpetuating those hardwires. So there's nothing more important than to outroot them into another ecosystem, into another world, into another environment. You've got to be radical if you want to change the hardwires. So we find so many of the programs where the people come from a certain community. Now they're having millions of money that they get from some funder overseas, and they doing these superficial little things, little program things and courses and certificates with them. They keep them in that bad ecosystems, and the hardwires are just getting worse by the day. So you're working against light, you're pooping against lightning. Sorry, I don't know what's the nice way to say that, but you're not going to get anywhere because you are not addressing the fundamental problem. Okay, so that's where we are getting to the end of the conversation, and I would like you to now shoot me with a few critical questions, and then we're going to go over to the homework.
Hi, Viva. It's Pula.
Hi.
A quick one with regards to the ecosystem when you're doing an audit. So what is it that one needs to look at on a top level, particularly around the school environment?
So the fundamental thing is that your child has to get I can moments. So a child has to have enough low enough anxiety and high enough stimulation and inspiration and belief in that child that he can. So there's got to be enough to that the environment creates these challenges that gives the child I can moments all the time. And I can moments must be something that gradually goes up all the time. It can't just be every day the same thing. And everyone gets treated on the same level. Because if what one child can do and another child can do is two total different things, because they come from different environments and they've got different neural pathway experiences. So if every child needs to be at a level where they are stimulated and challenged, that doesn't set them up for failure, which they call the panic zone, or they've got to be set up for I can moments all the time. So that's the first thing that has to happen. If that doesn't happen with your child, what are you basically doing? You're not growing neurology, because neural pathway networks and the neuroplasticity of the brain works only on just right challenges. It doesn't work on comfort zone and screaming on the. I mean, if there's anything that brings the anxiety up and the volition down, in other words, screaming at the child rather than actually getting that child into a constructive action of doing things. So if you do the opposite and you bring the anxiety up and the volition down, then you're absolutely in an ecosystem for distraction, and you are developing e-lock. So that immediately develops e-lock. It develops it overstimulates the primitive brain, that the child will stay in primitive brain level. So that will eventually enhance the addictive type of patterns and stress relieving patterns as the child grows up into adulthood, because we know it's the first 7 years that most of these things happen in the brain. You will see that I sent a nice YouTube video on Dr. Gabor where they researched this, where you can see how everything starts in that phase and how you create the scar tissue. So watch that a bit, and then that gives you a good idea if you are specifically asking about children.
All right. Noted. I'm listening to you when you're talking about the Wiz Hardwires in particular. It's how do you get, like I'll give you an example, the coaching environment that I work in. I'm coaching clients that are definitely wolves in sheep clothing. And they know this. And their reason is now they're gonna have to choose between their fears or lose their income. So, and the choice for them is very clear. There's no way they're going to lose their livelihood. So for that reason, they would rather be wolves in sheep's clothing and put on plastic smiles and have to deal with whatever it is that they have to deal with. So how do I make a turn around that? Is it giving them coping mechanisms to deal? Because clearly they've made a choice. It's like, there is no way I'm going to lose my house, my home, my children's education to stand for the truth, basically.
Yes. Look, what is it? The other side of truth is fear. Huh? So that is back
Correct.
to primitive. Yeah, and that's why a program that doesn't strengthen a person to get out of fear is not really you're teaching knowledge and you're teaching little skills, but your fundamental thing that is the fear, which is the primitive brain, is going to pull you back eventually to to zero level again, irrespective of all the things that you've learned and all the skills that you've gained. So if you cannot bring in inside the program from pre-incubation right through a process where you are putting them the whole time into just right challenges, where you stretch them because you're building tenacity and grit, and you're teaching them about their brain. They have to understand themselves, and they have to know what is causing their responsiveness. So the more you know thyself, the more you build it into the program, the more they become liberated to understand themselves and to admit that this is what I'm now doing as my defense mechanism, and this is my hardwire that is manifesting. So the more averse you talk about these inside business of the brain with them as part of the program, as the most important part of the program, the more they would actually overcome it faster and take ownership and say, but I am an eagle and I will overcome this. So we have to, and this is how I'm falling back the whole time into my whiz. And it's fine, because, the more you admit it, the easier it becomes, because we realize that there's absolutely no human that does not suffer from this. It is a human condition. And so it is to give them the truth the whole time about themselves and help them to accept the truth and to be vulnerable, and it's okay. So truth is the problem with whiz. A person who can't handle the truth is going to have a problem with whiz. They're going to be more and more, pretending and hypocritical, because they actually can't stand for the truth. So that's where the problem comes in. And we first have to teach truth about self, and then truth about others, and then truth about everything bigger than yourself. And the more they understand truth, the more they can trust. And because trust, truth, honesty, and transparency are the four components, brothers and sisters of each other, that we have to bring in ecosystems, so that ecosystem becomes a place where I can be vulnerable and I don't feel that I'm going to be hurt or being abused. And the ecosystems are the places where we've got to manage an ecosystem for change, to prevent the perpetrators, to prevent the bullies, the ones that laugh at each other, the ones that want to gossip, to manage it in a way where it cannot actually make babies, it cannot prevail. That is what an ecosystem for change is. And that's why we've got to strengthen leaders in the world, and we've got to develop them as little leaders in their little home ecosystems, to start doing that with their own children, and then to do that as a teacher in ECD, to do that everywhere where we have integrity. We do the thing right, and we do the right thing. And there's no ways that we will allow these hardwires to manifest, and we all have to know it ourselves. We've got to know the truth that will set us free. That's eventually what will break the pattern. Slowly but surely, you'll start seeing how strong humans become, because they can handle their own truth, and we give them tools to handle it. So the more you're going to see all these tools that we package, so that it's easier for people to just understand it and how to handle it. We've never learned really to break these things. So the detail of this, I will be able to teach you once you start becoming go on the revolution journey, or you become a coach that revolutionizes people out of that hardwire, and that sets them free out of that. But they need to be set free from themselves, so that nobody can hurt me without my own consent. Bring it on. Say anything bad about me. It cannot hurt me, because you're strengthening the core of that human about his own truth. So that's all answer I can give you for now. And I just want to mention at this point in time that your homework, people, is to go look for environments, ecosystems that is not good, that is creating a hardwire or hardwires. Describe that, and then the next one is to look for examples of bad attitude. I just want to mention that because my power can go off on me anytime. More questions? Thanks, Nono.
Nono asked everything that I wanted to ask, so I'm happy.
Okay. Thank you, Viva. Very practical.
Thank you. Okay, let's think about the bat in us and the ecosystems that we are in, and whether we are using a lot of reasons and excuses why it's right for us to be wrong. And in bad ecosystems, and we can use a lot of examples of belief systems that drive us. God hates divorce, could be one. It could be one argument or belief system, and now you sit with a man or a woman that abuses you, and that creates the most cruel and bad hardwires in you and your children. But now you stick in an ecosystem because you're holding on to something like that. So we've got to the whole time just challenge it. So I'm not saying specifically that is wrong. I'm just saying that we have to be strong enough. If you have a belief system like that, and it can be an enabling belief that you maybe hold on to, and you say, well, I'll hold on to this situation, even though it's this totally damaging my children, damaging me, destructing everything that we have. I'll hold on to this belief. Then you must say to yourself, are you really having enough faith? Have you got enough belief to stand the test of time? Because yes, I believe there's a certain time when you possibly could have enough belief to overcome it and to be stronger than all those circumstances and to hold on to that specific belief. I'm just giving you one example of how limiting beliefs hold us into bad ecosystems, and it just destroys us and gives us more and more and more hardwires, and you'll never ever get to your full potential or to that absolute ability that you could give to the world, and those contributions that you could have given to the world. So I'm leaving you with all sorts of provoking thoughts, people, because I love to go into all sorts of controversial ways of thinking, but it's just so that we can start thinking about thinking and realizing what hardwires are blocking us. Until I see you next time, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Viva.
Thanks, Viva.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Okay.
What's that? Yeah, that we're not doing that, but you see, it's still making there. Okay, let's show just halfway.
Stop sharing. Then it stops sharing.
Okay. Oh, is it that thing? Okay. Okay, now there was something that says share just half.
Yeah, that's great.
Quick timer. Okay, share quickly before the battery goes.
Sure.
Share. See if there's a. So it doesn't give the option of the face.
No, it's either this or the face. Let me see. Yeah, it's either.
Okay. It still shows that.
Yeah. Okay.